Yeah.
Do some light introduction. My name is Jesse. Obviously, I'm not Chris Alexander. Some people were expecting him. He was busy. I'm here representing Shock City Drop and Horrorama, Fangoria, all of those fun things. And we're here today to talk to Doug Bradley, our Lord and Savior Pinhead. So this is going to be sort of like a nice kind of casual Q&A. I'm going to ask a couple of questions to get us started.
I think that'll be up to me, thank you. I'm not in the mood to be nice and casual. It won't be!
Feel free to line up to ask questions and
Abuse.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Please
I
don't
like
do that.
abuse. Abuse is good.
I'd rather you didn't, but that's okay. So I wanted to ask what it's like being able to...
I'm dribbling.
I wanted to ask what it's like to be able to come to these events and be able to spend time with your fans.
Well, it wasn't meant to be a pregnant pause. It sucks. I can't stand them. Go away. No, it's an extraordinary thing. It's not so true at a Comic-Con because there are strange science fiction interlopers who don't get the dress code. But otherwise, what I say is I have this strange life where from time to time I get in the car or I get on the plane and I arrive at a hotel somewhere in America or indeed sometimes in Canada. And all these people in black cotton appear out of nowhere and give me money. And then I go home again. I have been attending conventions for, God help me, 27 years. It never ceases to amaze me what a loyal and committed and knowledgeable fan base this is. And I'm very lucky. And it's not very often as an actor that you get to meet the people that you work for. You get that more in the theatre, obviously, because it's an immediate thing and it's interaction between the actor and the audience. As an actor, you do your thing on set and then the movie goes out into the world and it plays constantly in cinemas and on DVDs and on Netflix and God knows what else, and whatever that response is or isn't, you have no idea. It is, although you say the most absurdly ridiculous things to me, it is gratifying and it is rewarding to know the effect and the impression that these movies and my performance made on you all. And I'm always grateful. So.
Thank you. So you've got a pretty public Facebook profile. I've seen a lot of pictures of gifts and handmade things that you get from your fans. I wondered, what is your favorite thing that you've ever gotten?
Oh, there's an awful lot of them. I'd be brutally honest, I don't keep all of them. What you see in the pictures is the best of them. There isn't room apart from anything else. And they come in all shapes and sizes. There's a little torture scene that a guy made entirely out of electronic and computer parts, pinhead and chains and hooks and a victim. And I have My Little Ponies, and some of them are absolutely minimal. There's one which is just a styrofoam ball with like 3 pins and 2 black eyes in it. And hey, it's Pinhead, it's great. I have a collection of artwork from 12-year-olds. It was a sudden spate of 12-year-olds bringing me drawings of Pinhead. So I've kept all of those. There are wood-burnt images. There are stuff that serious artists have done. I have a sculpture of Yoda as Pinhead. I have Winnie the Pooh as Pinhead. I have My Little Pony as Pinhead. I mean, pretty much, I have pictures of Big Bird as Pinhead. There's a collective picture of Kermit is Pinhead. Miss Piggy, of course, is the female. I can't remember who the Chatterer and Butterball are, but two of the other Muppets. So I keep them all, and they all sit there as a collection. There's a lot of them yet that need to be. So I moved into a new house a few years ago. There's a lot of them yet that need to be framed and hung and get kept.
Very cool. I was wondering as well, like mentioning the pins, I spoke to Paul Jones briefly about this, but did having the pins make it very difficult to kind of function around the set? Like, was it difficult to eat? Like, did you run into things?
Well, I have snagged myself a few times because you forget that you've got an inch, particularly when I think it was the first movies, either the first or the second, in shooting the scenes in the torture room with the chains hanging down, and we had to walk from the back of the set to the front of the set. So we plotted a path through the chains, and that was all fine. What they didn't tell us was that on action, they were going to start moving the whole rig that the chains suspended from. So as we walked, suddenly chains are appearing here and here, and of course one got hooked. So as the chain went back that way, I sort of had to go with it. But it's not, in terms of eating and everything else, it's not so much the nails, it's just the fact of latex. You have, when everything's on, the only bits of me that are there are my eyes and my ears and my lips. In fact, Gary Tunnicliffe's makeup actually brought the makeup right up onto my lip. That means that you have to be very careful with what you eat, because grease is your enemy. So that means all those nice steaks and oily fish and all the lovely oil-based salad dressings are a problem. And if you play fast and loose with it, then the grease gets into the corners of the mouth here, and it starts to break down the adhesive, which means that for the whole of the afternoon or after lunch or the rest of the night, whatever it may be, you're going to have a makeup artist constantly poking a brush in under the latex here, and then doing that, and then playing a hairdryer over your mouth, trying to get it to stick back down again. So on the first couple of movies, I was really only allowed to eat bread and dry salad. I got good, though, and I got rebellious. I got very good at eating steak and stuff that I wasn't supposed to, because I got good at being able to get a little chunk of it on the end of the fork and so nothing ever came into contact with my lips.
It's genius.
Eating with Pinhead.
Should have a cookbook where you're just bread and dry salad, different ways of eating it. Just wondering, are you still doing much theater?
I haven't done any theatre for a long time, apart from my one-man show, An Evening with Death, that I was doing a few years ago. I haven't done that for a while. I sort of miss theatre, but it's just the way it's worked out. Before HellRaiser was my first movie. I had done nothing but theatre for the best part of 15 years before HellRaiser came along. And I would certainly always say that theatre is really the reason I became an actor. It was my first love. But I love working on movies too. You don't have to remember your lines. Well, you do, but not quite the same pressure on you.
Is it something that you'd like to get back into?
Sure. I mean, it's not something I have a particular plan to do, but if the opportunity came along, certainly, yes.
So I want to go to the audience and see if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask Doug.
I can take this out of here. I'll stop talking to you.
No questions? Oh, you've got it. Okay, sorry. Got the microphone as well if you'd like to. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Hi Mario, how are you?
Great, Doug. Thanks for coming. It's a real honor to ask you a question. What I wanted to ask you was not Pinhead related. I wanted to ask you about one of my favorites is Nightbreed.
Okay.
And just could you talk a little about that and filming that and just any stories you could give us about Nightbreed.
Okay. Do I even need a microphone? Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me at the back?
Yeah.
Good, cool. Well, Nightbreed came, let me see, we started work on Nightbreed in 1989. We had filmed HellRaiser. HellRaiser came out. We'd done Hellbound. Hellbound was just coming out, and we were filming Nightbreed, and it was kind of exciting because Clive and his producer Chris Figg, who produced HellRaiser, Hellbound, and Nightbreed, had formed a company called Film Futures, and they had taken their own office at Pinewood Studios in London, and they had a whole slate of movies that were going to go ahead. Nightbreed is an adaptation, again, as Clive adapted The Hellbound Heart for HellRaiser. He adapted Cabal as Nightbreed. How many people have read Cabal? Okay, those few of you who have, the movie that we shot at Pinewood was pretty much literally a faithful page-by-page adaptation of the movie. A lot of the dialogue in the novel was straight into the screenplay. And indeed, Clive's plan at that point was that he was going to write, having written Cabal, he would make Nightbreed, he would write Cabal 2, he would make Nightbreed 2, he would write Cabal 3, and he would make Nightbreed 3. Always beware of Clive's plans. Worst thing you can ever do is ask Clive what he's working on. Because 20 minutes later, he'll still be going through the list. And he's always had a tendency, it's just the way his mind and his imagination works. Whatever he's working on, he sees it growing and growing and growing and growing. Problem is, he also has creative genius attention deficit disorder, so he gets then distracted because that was what he was planning yesterday, and this morning he was struck by a whole new idea when he got out of bed, and suddenly this idea is absorbing the whole of his universe. Nightbreed became problematic quite quickly, partly because it was mayhem. There were so many prosthetic makeups being applied. There were days when around the makeup area it was absolutely crazy because they were trying to get so many actors into prosthetics. It's always a problem. It's easy to plan it that way. It's a problem logistically to make it work. For me, I was working with Mark Coulier, who designed and applied the Lylesburg makeup. Mark is just brilliant, and I think that the Lylesburg makeup is an astonishing piece of work. Mark has now won 2 Oscars. One for his work on The Iron Lady, for the age makeup for Margaret Thatcher. And I've forgotten what the second one was for. Never mind, he has 2 Oscars. It was slightly odd for me because we had shot Hellbound at Pinewood. We were shooting Nightbreed at Pinewood. The crew on Nightbreed was almost identical to the crew on HellRaiser. I was having my makeup applied by the same people pretty much, with the same faces all around me. And the makeup application was identical to Pinhead. They look very different, but the process of the application is absolutely identical. And for me, the makeup application had become intrinsically part of Pinhead. So everything that I was going through, from getting up at 3:30 in the morning and being driven around the North Circular Road at 4 a.m. to Pinewood Studios to start the makeup process to be ready for the start of the filming day, and the whole process of the application, all of it was saying Pinhead, Pinhead, Pinhead. So it was a struggle for me to kind of get my head out of that and focus on Lylesburg. I enjoyed playing the part. We had a strange day halfway through filming. I came into work and it was evident that the whole atmosphere had changed, and not for the good. Chris Figg had, I think, played a familiar game. He had been not entirely honest about the budgeting in order to make sure that the film got greenlit and got underway, and then you hope that you'll deal with the problems as they come along. And I think things had fallen apart a little bit, and he had been sacked, which is fairly devastating when you come into work to find that your principal producer and line producer has just been fired. It meant also that we had what's known as finance on the set. That means that the money men have taken control. So you may have a situation in which the director sets up a scene, films it, says, cut, I'd like to go again, just because of this or that. And normally that's fine. What will happen when you have finance on set is that the director will say, cut, that's good, print it, I'd like to go again, and finance will say, why? You just said print it. Was there anything wrong with that take? No, there's nothing wrong with it, I'd just like then move on. And it's a very, very uncreative atmosphere to work in. So the final stages of Nightbreed were odd, and then all hell broke loose. Dickie, who had edited brilliantly HellRaiser and Hellbound, turned in his director's cut. Nightbreed is not really a horror film. It's a dark fantasy romance. It's a love story between a girl and a dead guy. I've likened it, if it relates to anything, more to the work of Federico Fellini or somebody like that, rather than a straightforward horror film of the 1980s. Clive was, there's that quote, I've seen the future of horror and his name is Clive Barker. And I remember seeing that and thinking, okay, you can push him into that pigeonhole if you want, and you can. He was hot from HellRaiser, and Fox wanted a horror movie, come hell or high water. They're confronted with a story in which the monsters are the good guys, with a couple of exceptions, but for the most part. They just want to live under the cemetery and be left alone to be weird in their own weird corner of the world and be left alone. The humans are the bad guys. We won't leave them alone. And the breed are peaceful. And peaceful monsters, studio executives can't understand. So they wanted the breed to be more aggressive, so they shot a whole bunch of new stuff that made the breed more aggressive. They moved Decker, David Cronenberg's character, to the center of the story, and he was never intended to be there. He's an extraordinary kickstart to the plot as this serial killing psychoanalyst. And it's not a criticism of David Cronenberg's performance at all. There simply isn't the material there for him, for Decker to support the movie at its heart. So all kinds of awful decisions were made. Clive had a choice to make. Does he stay and firefight, or does he walk away from it? And he stayed to firefight. And I know that even in the week before the movie was released, a friendly source within Fox called Clive and said, look, I think you need to know they're marketing your movie as a slasher, was how far away from the original intention of Nightbreed we'd come. They made all kinds of cuts that meant that the relationships between the breed, dialogue between the breeds simply didn't make sense. I got a phone call in London to tell me that they were revoicing Lylesburg. That isn't me in the movie. As released. I think what they were telling me was, we need to ADR your lines. We're not about to fly you from London to Los Angeles first class and put you up in a hotel and pay you a per diem, when we can get a voiceover artist from 20 miles up the road to come in and do it for however much it costs to to get an actor in the studio for 2 hours, which is not much. Consequently, Lylesburg acquired a German accent. I don't know why. I never played him with a German accent. Clive never suggested I played him with a German accent. I don't believe that's what Clive had in mind. But so he acquired German accent. It always seemed to me, from a German who had lived in Hong Kong for a while, but anyway. So when I saw Nightbreed in the cinema, it remains like no other movie. But it's so deeply flawed. And for me as an actor, you lose your face under prosthetics, you lose your voice as well. It's not your performance anymore, really. So thank God we got the Cabal cut, finally. It's not perfect, and you're never going to see Nightbreed as it was. But the Cabal cut is as close to it as you will get. And I think those of you who have seen the Cabal cut and saw Nightbreed will be aware of the difference between the two, and how much more the movie makes sense, how much more satisfying it is now as a movie. And I got my voice back. Yay! So that's Nightbreed, and I'm always asked, will there be a Nightbreed 2? No. But I shouldn't say that. That would be up to Clive, but I don't think so. And he came back to London from LA and he looked like death. He had lost a ton of weight. I think it's the reason he stopped making movies. He always loved the sociability and the collaborative nature of movie making as he did theatre. But I think after that he liked the idea that that he went back to drawing and writing, painting, and he knows that there's nothing between his imagination and the end of his fingertips. There's nobody leaning over his shoulder saying, Clive, we can't afford that. Clive, that's too extreme. That won't play in Omaha. That's not in the demographic. We need you to put a slasher scene in here. There's nobody, no middleman. That's the phrase I'm looking for. There's no middleman between his imagination and the end product. Hence, I think the long gap between Nightbreed and Lord of Illusions. Yes, thank you. I could only remember the last illusion, which was the short story adapted. So.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Hi.
Hi there.
What did you do to create the character of Pinhead? Like, how did you come to the character?
Well, what I always say is all the normal kind of boring questions that you ask yourself as an actor about your character. Who are you? What car do you drive? What, are you into sports? And if so, is it football or baseball or ice hockey or none of the above, etc. Don't apply here. And as far as I was aware, and I hope I would be right in this supposition, there was nowhere I could go to study Cenobites at work. I had Clive, who had literally dreamt the character. So I could talk to him, and he gave me typically Barkerian insights into the character. He said to me, he's a cross between a butcher and a monk. Hence, by the way, the apron, which was supposed to be styled on the stainless steel aprons that butchers and people who work in meat processing factories wear to stop themselves slicing themselves open with their knives. That was the intention there. He also told me that I was a surgeon in a hospital, but that this was a hospital with no wards, only operating theatres, and that as well as being the head surgeon responsible for carrying out the operations, I was also the chief administrator who was responsible for keeping everything running on time. You never know quite where to go with insights like that. You just have to let them sit in your head, really. There was a magazine called Piercing Fans International Quarterly. We weren't in the full flood of body modification as we had been since then. The punks had been around, safety pins through the noses, etc. But Piercing Fans International Quarterly was a step up from the occasional safety pin. It was people slicing and dicing every available part of their anatomy. And I do mean every available part of their anatomy. So I looked at that, thought about that, wondered about that. It's the screenplay. You read the screenplay, and 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 you read the screenplay. And then when you're not quite sure, you go back and read the screenplay again. After that, I don't know. I have no idea.
It just maybe the pins had something to do with it.
Well, it's called acting, and I can't explain that to you. I don't know what happens. I get the makeup on, and I get the costume on, and I sit in front of the mirror, and I ask everyone else to go away, and I spent 20 minutes in front of the mirror. Okay. happens if I say, "No tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering"? Oh, okay. This is fun. And I probably found most of Pinhead in 15, 20 minutes there in front of the mirror. In the Kabuki theatre, I detailed all of this in my book, available at very reasonable prices from my table. In the Kabuki theatre, when the actors have their masks on, it's a Japanese masked theatre, and their costumes, they go and sit in front of a mirror before they go out on stage, so you see yourself objectively before you go out. But then, you know, when I went on set, everybody took a step back. Everybody went, oh. And what that does is give you power. So I took all that on board. Plus, the first few times the makeup went on, it took like 6 hours. I'm completely spaced out by now, all of which helped. But I'm in a very strange kind of emotional place. Then you step onto your mark, and someone says action, and you hold your nose and jump, and hope it works. Apparently.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Hi. Can you tell us anything about your upcoming film called The Gathering? Like the premise, or if you started filming, or the all-star horror cast, or anything?
I read the screenplay several years ago.
Any details about that? Like you're playing Bram Stoker, I believe?
Apparently. I have nothing else to tell you.
So it hasn't started filming or anything?
The basic idea is pretty cool, which is that every Halloween the devil gets Bram Stoker, Edgar Allan Poe, and H.P. Lovecraft together. And they wanted me to play Bram Stoker, who was extremely fat, apparently. Jeff Combs played Poe, and I can't remember who they had slated to play Lovecraft.
Well, I think Combs was Lovecraft, but I know Rob England's supposed to be in it too. Was he?
I think he was supposed to be in one of the stories.
Oh.
I think. Anyway, so we all sit around and we make jokes about each other as writers, and then we each tell a tale. The premise I thought was very exciting. The stories had nothing to do with the work of Stoker, Poe, or Lovecraft, it seemed to me. I can't tell you anything else. I don't know anything else.
Okay, great. That's all I need.
Well, the problem with these things is I get sent the script. We'll probably come on to Death House in a moment. I get sent the script. I read it. I say, I'm interested. And they say, can we have a letter of intent? And you say, okay. Now, a letter of intent doesn't mean anything. It just says, I'm interested. But then you become attached. And your name goes on IMDb. And once your name is on IMDb, you can't get rid of it. I haven't had any conversation with anybody about The Gathering in several years. So I have no reason to suppose it's happening. The same applies to the Fourth Reich, which people for a long time believed had been made. No, or if it did, it happened without me, but I was still attached to it.
Thanks.
That's The Gathering. I have nothing else to tell you, I'm sorry.
Hi. I was just wondering, out of all the movies in the HellRaiser series, what was your favorite experience, and what was your worst experience? you'd say?
Well, a favourite experience. I never had a bad experience really on all of them. There were moments that stand out. I think all the scenes in the torture room in HellRaiser and Hellbound, which were very intense atmospheres on set, which you feed into in performance. The audience of death, as I called it in HellRaiser 3, when Joey comes back to the nightclub and Pinhead has created the audience of corpses. When she walks in, greeting her, and then appears from round the back. It's unbearable, isn't it? The suffering of strangers, the agony of friends. That scene was pretty cool. Lots more like that. Not so much bad moments as, I would say, disappointments. The church scene in HellRaiser 3 was a high point for me as well. I was looking forward to that a lot. Had a lot of fun doing that. The disappointments lie in places like at the end of Hellbound, the transformation from Pinhead back to human. Jeff Portas, who originally designed and applied the HellRaiser makeup, Pinhead makeup in the first two movies, had designed a whole sequence of makeups to graduate me from Pinhead back to human. And then when it comes to filming it, there isn't time. So half of them get jettisoned and you make a big jump in it. It's moments like that, and in Bloodline, there was supposed to be a shot of Pinhead kind of flying or floating across the ceiling. And when we came to the setup for it that they had created, I had to point out to them that Pinhead wears a skirt. And you can't just put me in a harness on the ceiling, because gravity does what gravity does. And the skirt is going to do that, and so the scene got scrapped because they couldn't make it work. And that's annoying, because somebody ought to have thought about that when they were greenlighting the script, when they were planning it. Somebody should have thought, how do we make this work with the skirt? We never saw Pinhead's feet, and I know it's an odd thing, but it's kind of important to me that Pinhead didn't have feet. And it was very hard to put me up on the ceiling in a skirt and not reveal my legs. And I didn't want Pinhead's legs revealed. Whatever is going on under Pinhead's skirt, I don't know. I don't know, and I don't need to know, and I don't want to know. But you certainly don't need to see my hairy legs, or my legs inside a black leotard, as I was often wearing. So, those kind of things, because there's scenes you think, oh, that's going to look so cool.
Yeah.
And then it's completely compromised and doesn't happen. Those are disappointments. That and getting into makeup as the sun goes down, and then being told around 5 o'clock in the morning that they're not going to get to you. You want to meet a pissed off actor?
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi.
I've read a lot of stuff online, internet interviews, all of this stuff, but I'd like to get the truth, the full story from you, if possible.
I wasn't there, and the donkey was not hurt.
Okay. I was wondering if you can give us a little bit of insight about
Is this the surgeon? No.
Revelation.
Oh,
and your
okay.
lack of involvement. And I also want to know if you've actually seen the finished product.
Okay. Let me deal with Revelation and Judgment. Revelation, middle of July 2010, I get a phone call. Not from anyone at Dimension Films, but from Gary Tunnicliffe, who was my makeup artist from Bloodline through Hellworld, so the last 5 HellRaiser movies. Because this is 2010, there's been an 8-year hiatus since we wrapped on Hellworld. Suddenly, a new Hellraiser movie is being made. Why? Because Dimension feel they would like to reinvigorate and renew the franchise and move it forward? No, because someone in the legal department of Dimension Films had spotted that in the fine print of their contract it stated that if they didn't have a movie in front of the camera by September the 3rd, they would lose the rights to the franchise. We are in the middle of July. They have no script, no cast, no crew. And I'm being told that people are pulling in favors here and there and everywhere, and I'm saying, why? I'm sorry, but as far as I'm concerned, the Weinsteins have been nothing but bad for this franchise since the day they got involved. They've threatened me with recast on every single movie. Loyalty is a two-way street. They tried, for example, we shot Deader and Hellworld back to back. They wanted me to make Deader and Hellworld for the same money I was paid to make Hellseeker. In other words, they wanted me to take a 50% pay cut per movie. That didn't happen, by the way, but that was what they were trying to pull. And my basic feeling, they were planning to spend $150,000 to make this movie, and they wanted me for 2 days in LA for the price of a new fridge. And it just didn't seem to me that this was a serious way to go about making a new Hellraiser movie. And it came apparently accompanied with a quote from Bob Weinstein to the Line production company: "We don't give a shit what you do, just get this movie made." Which gives you a kind of warm, fuzzy feeling about the whole thing. But I did say, send me the screenplay. I read the screenplay and I thought it was terrible. Screenplay that Gary had written. I thought it was bad. Not just not ready, which I kind of expected, because you can't start from a standing start in the middle of July and have a script camera ready on September the 3rd, unless the writer is a genius. And with all due respect to Gary, he's not that as a writer. So I turned it down. I did. In the time in between, I have bathed in love from the fans, from you guys, for not making a movie, which is kind of a strange experience. I mean, people sent me photographs of a copy of Revelation lying on the top of their trash can. Dear Doug, I bought this. I got 15 minutes in, and this is what happened next. A couple of months ago, in relation to the Judgment fiasco, which I'll come on to, I said to Steph, look, it's time I watched this thing. I'd seen the trailer, but I hadn't watched the movie. I'd read the screenplay, so I expected it to be bad. I didn't imagine it could possibly be that bad. I mean, Steph has a great phrase to describe bad horror movies, which is awful-tastic. When they're so bad you can't stop watching because it's just so much fun, kind of science fiction, mystery theatre type. This isn't that. Steph said she thought all Pinhead scenes looked like he was in the garage of the house rather than in hell. And I said it felt like the Lifetime channel made a HellRaiser movie. It's staggeringly awful. Clive described it as a dumpster abortion of a movie. And I would find it hard to quarrel with him. That's Revelation. So between Christmas and New Year last year, I got a phone call from Gary Tunnelcliffe. There's a new HellRaiser movie being made. Oh, is there? Okay. Which Gary is writing and Gary is directing. It's going to be called Judgment, and it's going to be extraordinary. And it's so extreme that everybody's kind of jumpy about it. But the Weinsteins are very excited, and okay, fine, but cut through the bullshit and what's happening. Oh, hello. It's, where are we now? 5-6 years since they nearly lost the rights to the franchise, and guess what's happening, people? They're about to lose the rights to the franchise all over again, so they need another movie made. The clue to this is to watch what happens with Children of the Corn as well, because Miramax bought into both Hellraiser and Children of the Corn at exactly the same time. And when Revelation was made, what happened? A Children of the Corn got made on quite normal cheap. I listened to Gary kind of, okay, here we go again. But I said, all right, send me the screenplay. And he said, they want me to write a second draft. Now, he's telling me that the movie is going to start shooting at the beginning of February. And again, I'm thinking, we're in the last week of December, and you're talking about a second draft, and you're what, 6 weeks away from shooting? You should be on your 4th or 5th draft now. It should be getting locked down at this point, not second draft. But I said, send me the screenplay. He said, I'm writing a second draft. I will get it to you as soon as I've completed, which will be in a week or so. Middle of January, I get a text from him saying, I'm ready to send you the screenplay. I need you to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Now, I'm familiar with non-disclosure agreements. I've signed them before, and I've signed one since. So it's not the fact of a non-disclosure agreement. It's the nature of this. In the first place, it's partly that, not to be egotistical, but I've been a central part of this damn franchise for 30 years. Now, suddenly, I'm a security risk. I have to sign an NDA just to read Hellraiser 10. This isn't Pentagon Secrets. This is a fucking Hellraiser film. Can we get a sense of perspective here? Does it really matter if I did bother to tell the world the details of the new Hellraiser film? Does anybody give a shit, really, honestly? To give you an example, I've said yes to a science fiction movie called The Dead Quiet that, all being well, will be shot towards the end of this year. And I got a non-disclosure agreement to look at the script. And it was about 2/3 of a page long, and it barely mentioned me. It was all about asserting the producer's intellectual copyright in the project, and so you don't publish it, and the names. And of course, fine, not a problem. I signed it without even thinking about it, sent it back. This thing that Gary sent me, Gary has a very strong and dark sense of humor, and honestly, my first reaction was, this is a wind-up. It was 3.5 pages long, written in in crazy legalese, the kind of legalese you can barely understand. But it felt like it was high school kids playing lawyers who had written it. It specified places where I was forbidden to talk about this screenplay, which has led me to contemplate holding Q&As at this point at conventions in the restroom, because it said that I was forbidden to discuss this screenplay in restrooms, in restaurants, in elevators, or in cellular telephone conversations that may be overheard. This is in spite of the fact, by the way, that Gary has told me pretty much the entire plot, which involves a serial killer and, oh, shit, I told you! On the phone, in a cellular telephone conversation, which may well have been overheard. And made me liable for $1 million if I was deemed to have significantly damaged the producer's investment in the project. And I told Gary to stick it where the sun doesn't shine. I just said, I'm not signing this. And that was it. I expected somebody might pick up the phone. I sort of feel if I had been involved in producing this movie, I would have said, this is ridiculous. Give me Doug's phone number. And I would have been on the phone saying, what's the problem here? What's upsetting you? Can we work around this? Can we reach a compromise? And I would have said, sure, give me a non-disclosure agreement that looks like this, and but nothing. And Gary said he gave an interview to Fangoria, in which, as well as quoting the content of a private email between myself and him, which led to a very angry exchange of texts between he and I, because I was extremely pissed off with him doing that. He said that they started recasting Pinhead the following day, so it doesn't seem to me like they were all that eager. Gary's talking big things for Judgment. He said in the same interview that this movie will contain some of the most intense and thought-provoking scenes ever seen in a horror film. So, you know, the shower scene in Psycho can fuck off, because here comes Judgment, right? I have a very, very long scene of intense and thought-provoking scenes in horror movies, but Gary's promising to trump them all. They found their new Pinhead, who Gary says has the screen presence of Peter Cushing. If that's true, I'm toast, frankly. Peter Cushing is my god. If he's even halfway to the screen presence of Peter Cushing, I'm done. So, I never saw the screenplay. I didn't get to turn it down. I was turned down because I take it as a God-given right to talk about what the hell I want to talk about to who the hell I want to talk about it while I'm taking a piss. Which I tend not to do, by the way, because you start discussing HellRaiser movies with people in public restrooms, you get a fist in the face. So that's Judgment is shot. I said nothing about Judgment from that point, and then suddenly Heather Langenkamp is in a radio station studio somewhere giving an interview about a completely different movie. In the midst of this interview, bless her cotton socks, she says, oh, and I'm going to be in the new HellRaiser film, and I'm flying out to Kansas next week to shoot my scenes. And suddenly the whole nature of this interview has changed, because it's the who, the what, new what, there's a new HellRaiser film? You're in the new HellRaiser film? Is Doug Bradley in the new HellRaiser film? So I talked to Facebook, because I knew what was coming, which was, are you doing the film? So I took to Facebook to say, no, I'm not doing the film, and here's why. So, judgment is made and will be upon us at some point, at which point we can all make our judgment on judgment.
That's great, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Not sure if do we have another, time for another question? It's like one more question? Okay,
Okay.
we have time for one more.
You mentioned that you've been doing these conventions for over 20 years, and I'm sure you see a lot of familiar faces. Some of them may have inflated egos. Is there anybody out there?
Are we
that
talking
you-
fans or?
No, I'm talking about different celebrities that you maybe.
Okay,
Yeah.
carry on with your question.
Is there anyone that you get a little bit disappointed when you see is going to be at the same convention as you that you may not want to work with or not?
I need to do this now because I've always wanted to play this scene in film. I'm going to put the microphone back on and I'm going to say, I plead the fifth.
Very smart, very smart. All right. Well.
Even though I'm not yet an American citizen, so I can't plead the fifth. I don't have that constitutional protection.
Well, thank you very much, Doug, for coming out and answering everybody's questions, and
Pleasure. Thank you, guys.